formula that tells me that the sun pulls on the earth, tell me how the sun pulls on the earth. What's the mechanism by which gravity is able to exert the influence that we see out there in the cosmos? So this is the question that drove Einstein, and naturally he went to the book, the Principia, that has all the results in math and physics that Newton discovered during his lifetime, and he wanted to see what Newton had to say about this issue. And there he found something really surprising, because Newton basically says, I don't know. I do not know how gravity works. I got the formula that seems to describe the influence of gravity, but he said how it actually exerts that influence, I don't know. In fact, in his own words, he said, to the answer of that important question, I leave it to the consideration of the reader. Most readers would read that and just keep on reading. And that's what happened for 200 years until Einstein blazed through this puzzle, spent 10 years working on it, and finally came up with an explanation for how gravity works. That is subtle, it is beautiful, it's one of the most miraculous achievements of the human mind to have come up with this idea. And we can try to piece together, historians of science do this, some of us who do science but write about it have spent a lot of time tracing Einstein's development and his own thinking to the result that he gave us, but honestly, the bottom line is you look at this result and you're like, how could the human mind have come up with this? And the idea is simply this. You can bring the lights down. The idea is that the medium that transmits gravity is nothing but space itself. So this is a representation of 3D space, a little hard to picture with it, so let's go to a two-dimensional version that captures all the essential ideas. Space is flat if there's nothing there, but Einstein says bring in the sun and the fabric of space warps. In fact, if you look in the vicinity of the Earth warps the environment as well. And here's the main point. The moon is kept in orbit because it's rolling along a valley in the warped environment that the Earth creates. This is how gravity works, according to Einstein. If you pull back, the moon is kept in orbit for the exact same reason, rolling along the valley in the curved environment that the sun creates. Bring the lights back up. That's the idea. Space is not just an inert stage. It's not just a container within which events take place. Space is alive. It's living, it's breathing, it responds, and it affects things that are moving through it. So it was November 25th of 1915. So roughly, 5-6 weeks away from 100 years ago, that Einstein stood in front of a hushed audience at the Prussian Academy of Science in Berlin and wrote down the equation that underlies that formula that drives the animation that you just saw. And it's, again, a nice simple equation. You have to study a little bit to know what it means. But it's r mu nu minus a half g mu nu r equals 8 pi g over c to the fourth t mu nu. That's the new collection of symbols that replaces the older Newtonian approach that gives this wonderful description of gravity. And the great thing is, it's not just an idea. It's an idea that makes its own predictions. Some of these predictions differ from Newton's predictions. And in 1919, one of those predictions was tested during a solar eclipse. Einstein's math, that theory, said that distant starlight, as it grazes by the sun, should travel on a curved trajectory. During a solar eclipse, you can see the distant light, and in that way, measure the shape of that curved trajectory and compare it to the mathematics, compare it to the prediction. And in September of 1919, Einstein got a telegram from those who had carried out this observation showing that the data agreed with his theory. In fact, a student was with Einstein at the time and said to Einstein, Professor Einstein, what would you have said if the telegram had not given you information saying that the observations confirmed general relativity, Einstein famously said, "I would be sorry for the dear Lord because the theory is correct." That was the sort of sense, the beauty of this theory, that it almost radiated its own truth, but of course it's data that ultimately determines everything. So that was the key moment when the world got a new description of gravity, warps and curves pushing things around. And this is the theory that we have been working with ever since. So that's the little preamble story, if you will, to the three vignettes that I'd now like to go to, each of which gives you some further insight into how the next generation and the generation beyond that worked with Einstein's ideas and took them to places that even he found uncomfortable, shocking, but ultimately we believe to be true. But before I get to those stories, any questions on the essential ideas